The training station floated in the darkness of space like a giant metal wheel. Sentinel-9 was one of the largest military academies in the galaxy. Young soldiers from dozens of different species came here to learn how to fight, how to survive, and how to win wars. The station had everything they needed: shooting ranges, combat arenas, simulation rooms, and instructors who were the best warriors their worlds could offer. In Training Room 7, 6 cadets waited for their new combat instructor. They stood in a loose group, talking quietly among themselves. Each one looked different from the others. That was normal here. The galaxy was a big place with many kinds of life. Tejo was the tallest. His people were called the Vraxians. They looked like Earth's dinosaurs might have looked if they had survived and learned to walk on 2 legs. His body was covered in thick green scales that could stop a knife. His hands ended in claws. His mouth was full of sharp teeth. Back on his homeworld, Tejo was considered small. Here he towered over most of the other cadets. Next to him stood Hyun-Soo. She was a Kryn, an insect species with a hard shell and 4 arms. Her eyes were compound, seeing in directions that others could not. Her people were famous for being smart and planning everything carefully. She watched the door with all her attention. Da-eun paced back and forth like a caged animal. She was a Felinar, and she looked like a cat that had grown to human size and learned to stand upright. Her fur was sleek and black. Her movements were smooth and quick. Her species had reflexes faster than almost anyone else. She was proud of that fact. Min-Woo sat on a bench against the wall. He was a Quillian, small and furry with large eyes and quick nervous movements. His people looked weak, but they were surprisingly fast and clever. Still, Min-Woo felt out of place among these larger, stronger beings. He kept quiet most of the time. Bora stood near the center of the room with her arms crossed. She was a Gorath, a species that resembled giant bears. She stood over 8 feet tall. Her muscles were visible even through her uniform. Her people were born warriors, bred for centuries to fight on the front lines of any battle. She did not smile often. The 6th cadet was named Dokja. He was a Sylph, a thin, gray-skinned species with long fingers and patient eyes. His people were diplomats and scholars, not fighters. But every species had to send soldiers to the coalition military. So here he was, trying to learn what warriors did naturally. They had heard rumors about their new instructor. Someone said it would be a Krathian war master. Someone else thought it would be a Thorian combat specialist. Thorians had 4 legs and could kick in any direction. They were difficult to fight. Everyone agreed their instructor would be someone impressive, someone dangerous, someone worth learning from. The door slid open. Everyone turned to look. A human walked in. She was small, maybe 5.5 feet tall. Her skin was soft and pale, with no scales, no fur, no armor. Her arms were thin. Her hands had no claws. She wore a simple gray uniform with a name tag that said Ji-Won. Her hair was pulled back in a practical style. She looked around the room with dark eyes that gave nothing away. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Tejo laughed. It was a loud, harsh sound. Da-Eun tilted her head. Her tail swished behind her in amusement. Even Bora looked confused. Humans were new to the galactic stage. They had only joined the coalition 30 years ago. Most species knew very little about them except that they came from a small blue planet and seemed friendly enough. They were diplomats, traders, scientists, not warriors. Ji-Won walked to the center of the room. She moved with calm confidence, like she did not notice the stares and whispers. When she reached the middle of the training mat, she turned to face them. Her voice was quiet but clear. It filled the room without effort. She said her name was Ji-Won. She was their close combat instructor. She would teach them how to fight when weapons were gone, how to survive when everything else failed, how to win against enemies who were stronger and faster than them. Tejo could not help himself. He stepped forward. He asked what a human could possibly teach them about fighting. His voice was loud and challenging. He said humans had no natural weapons, no armor, no strength. What did they know about real combat? Ji-Won looked at him. Her expression did not change. She asked if he wanted to find out. Tejo grinned. This would be quick. He stepped onto the mat. The other cadets moved back to give them space. Bora shook her head slowly. This was going to be embarrassing. Not for Tejo. Ji-Won gestured for him to attack. Just like that. No preparation. No warm-up. She just stood there with her hands at her sides. Tejo did not hesitate. He rushed forward. He was fast for his size. His clawed hand reached for her shoulder, intending to grab her and pin her to the mat. It would be over in seconds. What happened next was hard to see. Ji-won moved. Her movement was small and precise. She stepped to the side. Her hand caught Taeho's wrist. Her other hand struck his elbow. There was a twist, a pull. Suddenly, Taeho was falling forward off balance. His own momentum worked against him. Before he could recover, Ji-won was behind him. Her arm wrapped around his thick neck. Her legs hooked around his body. She was small, but her position was perfect. She used leverage instead of strength. Taeho tried to throw her off. His scales should have protected him. They did not help. She knew exactly where to apply pressure. He could not breathe. He tapped her arm twice. The universal signal for surrender. Immediately she let go. Taeho dropped to his hands and knees, gasping for air. The whole thing had taken maybe 5 seconds. The room was silent. Every cadet stared. Taeho slowly got to his feet. His pride was hurt more than his body. He looked at Ji-won with new eyes. She had not even broken a sweat. Ji-won looked around at all of them. She said her first rule was simple. Never underestimate anything. Not your enemy. Not your environment. Not yourself. The moment you think you know everything is the moment you die. She asked who else wanted to test her. Nobody moved. Dayun's tail had stopped swishing. Bora was paying attention now. Even Minwoo sat up straighter. Good, Ji-won said. Then they could begin actual training. She told them to pair up. They would start with basic grappling techniques. She walked among them as they began their exercises, correcting positions and explaining principles. Her movements were economical. Her instructions were clear. She did not waste words. As the session continued, the cadets began to realize something. Ji-won was not just good at fighting. She understood it in a way they did not. When Hyun-soo asked a question about leverage, Ji-won explained the mathematics of force and angles. When Bora wondered how someone smaller could defeat someone larger, Ji-won showed her 6 different ways to use an opponent's weight against them. By the end of the first session, all 6 cadets were tired. They had worked harder than they expected. Ji-won barely seemed winded. She told them to rest and dismissed them. As they left the training room, they talked quietly among themselves. The laughter was gone. The mockery was forgotten. In the hallway, Minwoo asked the others what they thought. Taeho rubbed his neck and admitted the human was better than she looked. Taeyun said she moved like a predator, but not like any predator she had seen before. Bora simply nodded. She would reserve judgment. But she would pay attention. Back in the training room, Ji-won collected her things. She checked her tablet for tomorrow's lesson plan. She had trained many species over the years. The reactions were always the same at first. Doubt, amusement, sometimes outright dismissal. That was fine. They would learn. They always did. She thought about her homeworld, Earth. A place these aliens would probably call a nightmare. A world where almost everything wanted to kill you. Where humans had clawed their way to the top of the food chain not through strength or speed or natural weapons, but through intelligence and an absolute refusal to give up. That was what she would teach these cadets. Not how to be strong, how to survive. There was a difference. A big one. Ji-won turned off the lights and left the training room. Tomorrow would be more interesting. 3 weeks passed. The training grew harder every day. Ji-won pushed the cadets beyond what they thought was possible. She made them run until their legs shook. She made them fight until they could barely stand. She taught them holds and strikes and ways to escape from impossible positions. Every lesson had a purpose. Every drill taught survival. The cadets stopped laughing. They stopped questioning. Taeho's pride was gone, replaced by respect. Dayun watched Ji-won's movements like a student studying a master. Bora followed every instruction without complaint. Even Dokja, who had never been athletic, found himself getting stronger and faster. One afternoon, they gathered in a classroom instead of the training room. This was unusual. Combat training happened in arenas and gyms, not lecture halls. The cadets sat at desks while Ji-won stood at the front. Behind her was a large screen. Ji-won activated the screen. An image appeared. A blue and green planet hanging in black space. Earth. Hyun-soo raised one of her 4 hands. She asked why they were looking at a picture of the human homeworld. What did this have to do with combat training? Ji-won said everything. She explained that to understand how humans fight, you must understand where they come from. She told them that Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world. the highest danger rating in the Galactic catalog. Minwoo looked confused. He said Earth looked beautiful in the pictures. How could it be dangerous? Ji-won changed the image. Now it showed a dense jungle. She explained that Earth has environments that can kill in dozens of ways. The planet has extreme weather. Hurricanes that destroy cities. Tornadoes that tear buildings apart. Temperatures that swing from burning hot to freezing cold. Earthquakes, volcanoes, floods. Another image appeared. A large cat with sharp teeth. Then a bear, a wolf, a crocodile, a shark. Ji-won explained that Earth is full of predators. Animals that hunt and kill. Some hunt in packs. Some hunt alone. Some are bigger than humans. Some are faster. Almost all of them are stronger. Bora frowned. She asked how humans survived if everything was trying to kill them. Humans had no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. They seemed weak, Ji-won smiled. It was a cold smile. She said that was the point. Humans survived precisely because they were weak. They had to be smart. They had to use tools. They had to work together. They had to never give up. She changed the image again. This time it showed a human running. She explained that humans are pursuit predators. They evolved to chase prey over long distances. A human can run for hours without stopping. Most animals can sprint fast, but they tire quickly. Humans do not. They just keep coming, keep chasing. Eventually, the prey collapses from exhaustion. Daeun's ears flattened against her head. She understood pursuit hunting. It was the hunting style that scared prey animals the most. Not the quick kill, but the slow, inevitable chase. The predator that never stops following. Ji-won continued. She said humans sweat. Most species in the galaxy did not understand this at first. Sweating seemed wasteful, leaking precious water. But sweating meant humans could regulate their body temperature better than almost anyone. They could function in extreme heat. They could keep moving when others had to stop and rest. Human bones were dense and self-repairing. A broken bone would heal stronger than before. Human skin could close wounds and fight infections. The human immune system battled thousands of diseases every day. Diseases that would kill most species barely slowed humans down. Then Ji-won talked about adrenaline. She explained that when humans are threatened, their bodies release a chemical that makes them stronger, faster, and unable to feel pain. A human with adrenaline could lift weights that should be impossible, could run on broken legs, could fight when they should be dead. There were documented cases, she said, of humans doing impossible things. A mother lifting a vehicle to save her child. A wounded soldier fighting for hours despite fatal injuries. A lost hiker walking 100 miles with no food or water. Humans did not give up. Could not give up. Survival was written into every cell of their bodies. The classroom was very quiet. The cadets were beginning to understand. Humans were not weak. They were terrifying. They were predators that looked like prey. They were survivors wrapped in soft skin. Dokja asked a question in his soft voice. He asked if all humans could do these things. Or just soldiers like Ji-won. Ji-won said all humans. Every single one. Soldiers were just humans who trained their natural abilities. But any human, if pushed hard enough, could become dangerous. That was the gift and curse of coming from a death world. You either learned to survive or you died. She turned off the screen. The lesson was over, but she had one more thing to say. She told them that she would take them to a hostile environment soon. A real survival test. They would see firsthand what it meant to adapt or die. 2 days later, they boarded a transport ship. Ji-won would not tell them where they were going. Only that they should be prepared for cold. Very cold. The ship dropped them on a frozen moon. The temperature was far below zero. Ice covered everything. The wind cut like knives. They each had a small pack with basic supplies. Water, food bars, a thermal blanket, a knife. They had to reach an extraction point 72 hours away on foot. Within the first hour, the cadets were struggling. Taeho's scales, which protected him from blades, conducted the cold straight to his body. He shivered constantly. Bora's thick fur became matted with ice, losing its insulation. Yunsu's compound eyes were not designed for this environment. She had trouble seeing through the blowing snow. Ji-won moved through the ice field like she belonged there. She showed them how to wrap their faces to prevent frostbite, how to recognize the signs of hypothermia, how to walk to conserve energy. She found a sheltered spot behind ice rocks and built a windbreak using snow and debris. When night fell, the temperature dropped even further. Ji-won started a fire using materials from the environment. Frozen plants, crystallized fuel deposits, a simple striker from her pack. The cadets huddled around the flames, grateful for the warmth. The next day, Ji-won hunted. She tracked small creatures that lived in the ice. She caught one with a trap made from cord and a stick. She cleaned it efficiently and cooked it over the fire. She shared the meat with the cadets. They were surprised that she could find food in this frozen wasteland. Daeun asked how Ji-won learned to do all this. Ji-won said her grandmother had taught her. Her grandmother had lived in a cold region on Earth. She had taught young Ji-won how to hunt, how to track, how to survive. Those lessons, learned as a child, now kept her alive on an alien moon. By the third day, the cadets were exhausted but alive. They had learned to follow Ji-won's example, to layer their clothing, to keep moving, to help each other. When the extraction ship arrived, they climbed aboard with new understanding. Back on Sentinel-9, the cadets gathered in their barracks. Minwoo spoke first. He said he had watched Ji-won on that frozen moon. She had not just survived. She had thrived. She had been comfortable in an environment that nearly killed the rest of them. Hyunsoo said she finally understood what Ji-won meant about death worlds. If you grew up somewhere that tried to kill you every day, everywhere else seemed easy by comparison. Taeho was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that the others had been thinking. He said that humans scared him now. Not because they were strong, but because they were unstoppable. You could wound them and they kept coming. You could exhaust them and they kept going. They were like machines that did not know how to quit. Bora nodded slowly. She said she was glad humans were allies. She would not want to face them as enemies. The others agreed. In the silence that followed, they all thought the same thing. Ji-won had taught them more than combat techniques. She had taught them what it meant to survive against all odds. And she had shown them that the most dangerous thing in the galaxy might just be a human who refused to die. The announcement came during morning assembly. Every year, Sentinel-9 hosted a combat tournament. It was tradition, a way for different species to test their skills against each other, a way to build respect and understanding through controlled violence. Each training class would send one champion to represent them. The fights would be broadcast throughout the station. Winners earned honor for their class and their species. More importantly, they earned the respect of their peers. That evening, the cadets met in their common room to discuss who should represent them. Bora seemed like the obvious choice. She was the biggest, the strongest, the most naturally suited for combat. Her people had been warriors for generations. But before they could nominate her, Ji-won walked into the room. She said she would fight for them. She said she wanted to show them something important. The cadets looked at each other. They had seen Ji-won fight in training. They knew she was skilled. But the tournament was different. It would have warriors from species bred for battle, creatures with natural weapons and armor. Could a human really compete? Taeho asked if she was sure. He meant no disrespect, but the opponents would be dangerous. Real warriors, not students. Ji-won smiled and said she was counting on it. The cadets agreed. Part of them wanted to see what would happen. Part of them trusted their instructor. And part of them, though they would not admit it, wanted to see Ji-won fight for real. The tournament began 3 days later. The main arena was packed. Cadets from every class filled the seats. Instructors watched from private boxes. Even some of the station commanders came to observe. Ji-won's cadets sat together in the front row. They watched as the first few fights played out. A Thorian warrior against a Kelthran fighter. Both were impressive. Both were powerful. The Thorian won by pinning his opponent with superior weight and leverage. Then Ji-won's name was called. She walked onto the arena floor wearing simple combat gear. No armor, no weapons, just a human in gray training clothes. The crowd murmured. Some laughed. Most looked confused. Her opponent was announced. A Draknor warrior named Vex. He was enormous, over 9 feet tall with scales like metal plates. His arms were thick as tree trunks. His hands could crush stone. The Draknor were famous warriors, their martial traditions going back thousands of years. Vex looked down at Ji-won. He said something in his language. The translator caught it. He was asking if this was a joke. Was the human serious? Ji-won did not respond. She took her position. The referee explained the rules. Fight until submission or knockout. No killing strikes. No attacks to vital organs. When both fighters acknowledged understanding, the referee stepped back and signaled the start. Vex charged immediately. It was a smart move. Use size and strength to overwhelm the smaller opponent quickly. End it before technique mattered. His massive arm swung toward G1 like a hammer. She was not there. She had moved before he completed the swing. Reading his body language, anticipating his attack, she was already inside his guard, too close for him to hit effectively. Her elbow struck his ribs, not hard enough to break his scales, but enough to make him feel it. Vex spun, trying to catch her. She ducked under his arm. Her foot swept his leg. He stumbled but did not fall. His size and weight kept him upright. He roared in frustration and charged again. What followed was not a fight. It was a lesson. G1 did not try to match his strength. She used his momentum against him. When he pushed, she pulled. When he pulled, she redirected. Every attack he made put him more off balance. Every missed strike tired him more. She targeted his joints where the scales were thinner. His knees, his elbows, his neck, small precise strikes that accumulated damage. Nothing dramatic. Nothing flashy. Just systematic destruction of his ability to fight. 2 minutes into the fight, Vex was breathing hard. 4 minutes in, he could barely lift his arms. At 6 minutes, G1 caught his wrist, twisted and used a joint lock that forced him to the ground. His arm was extended at an angle that would dislocate his shoulder if he moved. He had no choice. He tapped out. The arena was silent. Then the cadets in G1's class started cheering. Others joined in. By the time G1 left the arena floor, half the station was applauding. Her second fight was the next day. This time her opponent was a Kelthran berserker. The Kelthrans were known for entering combat trances. In this state they felt no pain and fought with terrifying aggression. Many considered them unstoppable once the trance began. The fight started and the Kelthran immediately entered his trance. His eyes changed color. His breathing became rapid. He attacked with wild, powerful strikes that would have killed an unprotected opponent. G1 did not engage him directly. She moved, constantly, staying just out of reach, making him chase her, making him expend energy. A berserker was dangerous, but a berserker had a weakness. The trance burned through their energy reserves quickly. If you could survive the initial assault, exhaustion would take them. For 8 minutes, G1 evaded. She dodged. She ducked. She rolled. She did not attack back. She just made him miss. Over and over, the Kelthran swung at empty air. He chased shadows. His muscles burned. His lungs screamed. When he finally collapsed from exhaustion, G1 was barely breathing hard. The referee declared her the winner. She helped her opponent to his feet. He looked at her with new understanding. She had won not by being stronger, but by being smarter. The third fight was against a Vortan assassin. The Vortans were a species bred for stealth and precision killing. They were fast, flexible, and trained from birth in deadly techniques. Most considered them the most dangerous hand-to-hand fighters in the galaxy. This fight was different. Both fighters were technical. Both understood anatomy and leverage. Both knew how to kill quickly and efficiently. The arena fell completely silent as they faced each other. The Vortan struck first, a lightning-fast jab toward G1's throat. She blocked and countered. He evaded and attacked again. They moved in a deadly dance, each trying to find an opening in the other's defense. This was not about size or strength. This was pure skill against pure skill. The fight lasted 12 minutes. By the end, both fighters were exhausted. But G1 had one advantage the Vortan did not. She had grown up on a death world where you learned to push past exhaustion or you died. When the Vortan hesitated for just a fraction of a second, G1 struck. A perfect combination that ended with the Vortan on the ground, unable to continue. G1 won the tournament. She stood in the center of the arena as they announced her victory. The crowd roared its approval. Her cadets cheered louder than anyone. But G1 did not smile or celebrate. She simply bowed to her opponents and walked off the floor. That night, the cadets gathered in their barracks. They were excited, proud, buzzing with energy. They had watched their instructor defeat warriors that should have been unbeatable. They had seen her prove that technique and intelligence could overcome natural advantages. Minwoo sat on his bunk, quiet as always. He had watched all 3 fights carefully. He had seen something the others might have missed. In each fight, G1 had not just won. She had controlled everything. The pace, the distance, the strategy. Her opponents had been stronger and faster, but she had dictated how the fight unfolded. He thought about what G1 had taught them about humans, about death worlds, about evolution and survival. He thought about pursuit predators that never stopped. about creatures that looked weak but were actually apex hunters. And then he asked the question that had been growing in his mind for weeks. He asked it quietly, but everyone heard him in the sudden silence. He said that watching Ji-won fight was like watching something pretending to be human. Something that wore human skin but was actually something else. Something dangerous. Something that belonged at the top of the food chain. He asked why she was an apex predator wearing human skin. The other cadets stared at him, then at each other. Because Minwoo had put into words what they had all been feeling. Ji-won moved like a predator, thought like a predator, fought like something at the absolute top of the food chain. But she looked so normal, so human, so harmless. Hyun-soo said maybe that was the point. Maybe that was what made humans so dangerous. They looked like prey, but they were predators. They seemed weak, but they were strong. They appeared harmless, but they were deadly. Da-yoon said her species had a saying, "The most dangerous predator is the one you underestimate, the one you do not see coming, the one that looks like it could not possibly hurt you." The cadets fell silent again. They thought about their instructor, about humans, about the lessons they had learned, and they realized that Minwoo was right. Ji-won was not pretending to be an apex predator. She was one. She always had been. They just had not recognized it until now. The alarm woke them at 3 in the morning. Not the normal wake-up alarm. The emergency alert. The sound that meant something had gone terribly wrong. The cadets stumbled out of their bunks, confused and half asleep. The lights in the barracks flashed red. Bora was the first to check the station network. Her face went pale under her fur. She said the station was under attack. Multiple breaches. Enemy forces already inside. The defensive systems were failing. The message ended with an order. All cadets were to shelter in place and await rescue. Taeho asked who was attacking. Bora checked again. She said it was the Skarn Dominion, a hostile empire that the coalition had been in Cold War with for decades. They were using the chaos to strike at coalition military assets. Sentinel-9 was a prize target, full of future officers and valuable intelligence. The door to their barracks slid open. Ji-won stood there, fully dressed in combat gear. She carried a rifle. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp and focused. She told them to get dressed. Combat gear. Everything they could carry. They had 2 minutes. Dae-yoon asked about the order to shelter in place. Ji-won said that order was for cadets who could not fight. They were not those cadets. Not anymore. Staying here would mean capture or death. Moving gave them a chance. The cadets dressed quickly. They grabbed equipment, knives, tools, emergency supplies. Within 2 minutes they were ready. Ji-won led them out of the barracks and into the corridor. The station shook from distant explosions. Smoke drifted through the ventilation systems. Somewhere alarms kept screaming. Ji-won moved through the corridors like she had memorized every inch of the station. She avoided the main passages. Instead, she took them through maintenance tunnels and service corridors. Places meant for repair crews, not soldiers. Tight spaces where their small size was an advantage. They heard voices ahead, harsh commands in a language none of them recognized. Ji-won held up her hand. Everyone stopped. She gestured for them to stay quiet and still. Through a grate in the floor, they could see a Skarn patrol passing below. 4 soldiers in heavy armor carrying plasma rifles. The patrol moved on. Ji-won waited another full minute before moving again. She whispered that the Skarn were professionals. Well-trained, well-equipped. But they did not know the station like she did. That was their advantage. The only advantage they had. They reached a storage room. Ji-won opened lockers and pulled out equipment. She gave each cadet something useful. Tools that could be weapons. Supplies that could be used to make traps. She told them they were going to do what she had trained them for. They were going to survive. Hyun-soo asked what the plan was. Ji-won said the plan was simple. Stay mobile. Stay hidden. Make the enemy pay for every meter they advance. Coalition reinforcements were coming, but they would take hours to arrive. The goal was to survive until then and make the Skarn regret ever boarding the station. Over the next hours, they became ghosts. Ji-won taught them to move silently. To use the station itself as a weapon, they sealed corridors behind them, forcing the Skarn to take longer routes. They vented atmosphere in strategic sections, making certain areas impossible to cross without suits. They sabotaged equipment, causing malfunctions and confusion. When they had to fight, they fought smart. Taeho would make noise to draw attention while the others set up an ambush. Hyunsu used her forearms to work on systems faster than anyone else, creating traps and obstacles. Dayun scouted ahead with her superior senses. Minwoo crawled through spaces too small for others, planting surprises. Bora held defensive positions when they needed someone immovable. But it was Jiwon who was the most dangerous. She moved through the chaos with cold precision. When a Skarn patrol got separated from their unit, she struck. Fast and silent, she used everything as a weapon. A piece of pipe, a maintenance tool. Her bare hands, she did not waste ammunition. She did not take risks. She just eliminated threats efficiently and moved on. The cadets watched her and understood. This was not the instructor who taught them in class. This was not the fighter who won tournaments. This was a human doing what humans did best: surviving, adapting, hunting. She was not fighting like a soldier following rules. She was fighting like something from a death world where you did whatever it took to stay alive. They found a group of younger cadets trapped in a classroom. The Skarn had them surrounded. Jiwon studied the situation. She gave quick instructions to her team. They positioned themselves in the corridors around the classroom. Then Jiwon created a distraction. She walked into view of the Skarn soldiers and opened fire. Not to kill, to draw their attention, to make them chase her. The Skarn took the bait. They pursued her down a corridor, right into the trap. The cadets collapsed the ceiling using explosives Jiwon had rigged earlier. Half the patrol was buried. The rest fell back in confusion. The trapped cadets escaped through a side passage. They saved 2 more groups using similar tactics. Each time Jiwon used the environment, used the Skarn's own aggression against them, made them commit to fights they could not win. The station became a maze where every corner could hide death. The Skarn advance slowed. They became cautious, afraid. During a brief rest, Dokja asked Jiwon a question. He asked how she could stay so calm, how she could kill without hesitation, how she could move through this violence like it was natural. Jiwon looked at him with tired eyes. She said that humans do not have the luxury of hesitation. On Earth, hesitation means death. Fear means death. Weakness means death. Humans evolved on a world where survival was never guaranteed, where every day was a fight. That did not make them cruel. It made them practical. She told them that every human carries inside them the lessons of 1,000,000 years of survival. It is written in their DNA, in their instincts, in the way their brains work. When a human is threatened, ancient programming activates. Programming that says do whatever is necessary to survive, fight harder, run farther, endure longer, never give up. Bora said she had always thought her people were born warriors. They were bred for combat over many generations. But watching Jiwon made her realize something. Her people learned to fight. Humans were born fighting. Every single day of their evolution was combat. Survival was not something they trained for. It was what they were. The station shook from another explosion. Closer this time. Jiwon checked her weapon and stood. She said they needed to keep moving. The Skarn were getting organized. They had to stay ahead of them. They moved through a destroyed section where a hull breach had been sealed. Through the transparent emergency barrier, they could see space, ships. The Skarn fleet was larger than they thought. Dozens of warships surrounding the station. And in the distance, too far to help, coalition vessels approaching Jiwon calculated times and distances in her head. She said the coalition fleet would arrive in approximately 3 hours. They needed to hold out that long. They needed to cause enough chaos that the Skarn could not complete their objectives. And they needed to survive. Taeho asked if she thought they could do it. 7 of them against hundreds of enemy soldiers. She looked at him and said something that the cadets would remember for the rest of their lives. She said that numbers did not matter. Training did not matter. Equipment did not matter. What mattered was the will to survive. The Skarn were here to complete a mission. If that mission became too costly, they would retreat. But her cadets were fighting for their lives, for the lives of everyone else on the station. They were fighting with the desperation of prey that refused to be prey. And that made them more dangerous than any army. Minwoo said he understood now what she meant about death worlds. She was not just teaching them combat. She was teaching them to think like survivors from Earth, to never accept defeat, to turn every disadvantage into an advantage, to fight not like soldiers but like humans. Jiwon nodded. She said they were learning, and if they kept learning, they would live through this. They moved deeper into the station. Behind them, the Skarn continued their assault. Ahead of them, the central hangar waited. That was where the final confrontation would happen. That was where they would either survive or die. G1 checked her weapon one more time and led her cadets forward into the darkness. The central hangar was the heart of Sentinel-9, a massive space where ships docked and supplies were loaded. Right now, it was their last defensible position. Behind them was the station's main reactor. If the Skarn reached it, they could take control of the entire station or destroy it completely. G1 and her cadets had been fighting for 6 hours straight. They were exhausted, injured, running low on supplies, but they had slowed the Skarn advance. They had saved dozens of lives. They had made the enemy pay dearly for every meter of station they captured. Now the Skarn were regrouping for a final push. Their commander had arrived personally, a massive warlord named Krath. He wore powered armor that made him nearly invincible. His troops feared him more than they feared death. He was here to finish this. G1 positioned her cadets strategically around the hangar. They had limited cover, a few cargo containers, some disabled vehicles. It was not much, but it was what they had. She checked her weapon, almost out of ammunition. That was fine. She had fought with less. The cadets looked at her. They were scared. Of course they were. They were facing death. But they were also ready. She had trained them, taught them, shown them what it meant to survive. Now it was time to see if those lessons had taken root. G1 told them the plan. It was simple. They would hold this hangar. They would make the Skarn bleed for every inch. Coalition forces were 20 minutes out. They just needed to survive 20 more minutes. That was all. 20 minutes and they would win. Bora asked what if they could not hold for 20 minutes. G1 looked at her and said that was not an option. Giving up was not an option. Retreat was not an option. They would hold because there was no alternative. That was what humans understood. Sometimes you just do not quit no matter what. The hangar doors exploded inward. Skarn troops poured through the opening. Dozens of them, all professional soldiers, all heavily armed. They advanced in formation, covering each other, moving like the trained military unit they were. G1 and her cadets opened fire. They used every trick she had taught them. Taeho drew fire while others flanked. Hyunsu coordinated their movements with perfect timing. Daeun struck from unexpected angles. Minwoo sabotaged equipment. Bora held the center line. They fought as a team, as a unit, as warriors, but there were too many Skarn. For every one they stopped, 2 more advanced. The cadets fell back, regrouped, fell back again. They were being pushed toward the reactor room. Soon they would have nowhere left to go. Then Krath entered the hangar. The Skarn warlord was massive in his powered armor. He carried a weapon that could punch through starship hull. His voice boomed across the hangar. He told them to surrender. They had fought well. He would give them honorable capture if they yielded now. G1 stepped into the open. She was small compared to him. Her armor was damaged. She had a cut above her eye. She looked tired, but her eyes were cold and focused. She told him no. No surrender, no yield, no retreat. Krath laughed. He asked what a single human thought she could do against him. Against his army. Against his power. She was nothing. Less than nothing. A soft creature from a species that had no business in this war. G1 raised her weapon. She told him he was wrong. She was not soft. She was not weak. She was from Earth, a death world where everything tried to kill you from the moment you were born. A place that made survivors, that made hunters, that made humans. She told him that humans do not know how to quit, that it is not in their nature, that they will fight with their last breath and beyond, that they are apex predators wearing skin that looks soft but hides something terrible. Krath roared and charged. His powered armor made him fast despite his size. His weapon swung toward her, a strike that would crush her completely. G1 moved, not away, toward him, inside his reach where the massive weapon could not hit her. She dropped her rifle and grabbed onto his armor. He tried to shake her off. She climbed, used his own armor's joints as handholds, reached his helmet. She had a small explosive charge, something she had made from spare parts and maintenance chemicals. She placed it carefully on a weak point in his helmet seal. Then she jumped clear and ran. The explosion was small, just enough to crack the seal, not enough to kill him, but enough to disable his armor's breathing system. enough to flood his helmet with smoke and debris. Krath stumbled, blinded and choking. His troops hesitated, unsure what to do. Their commander was down. Ji-Wan signaled her cadets. Now, while the enemy was confused, they attacked with everything they had left, not trying to win, just trying to hold, just trying to survive a few more minutes. The Skarn fought back. It was chaos. Close quarters combat throughout the hangar. No formation. No strategy. Just desperation and violence. The cadets fought like they had been taught, using everything, refusing to stop, refusing to die. Then the walls shook, different from the explosions they had felt before. This was the rumble of ship engines, big ones. The Coalition fleet had arrived. Plasma fire lit up space outside the hangar viewports. The cavalry had come. The Skarn heard it too. Their commanders shouted orders to retreat. They had failed. The station was still in Coalition hands. They needed to escape before the fleet cut off their withdrawal. The Skarn troops pulled back, fell back, retreated toward their ships. Ji-Wan and her cadets held their positions. They did not pursue. They just watched as the enemy fled. When the last Skarn soldier was gone, they slowly lowered their weapons. The hangar was a disaster. Destroyed equipment, scorch marks, the smell of smoke and burnt metal. And in the center, 7 figures stood, exhausted, injured, but alive. Coalition Marines poured into the hangar. Medics, engineers, commanders. They found Ji-Wan and her cadets, and stared. These 7 had held against hundreds, had slowed an invasion force, had saved the station. A Coalition admiral approached. She looked at the damage, at the evidence of fighting, at the small group that had accomplished the impossible. She asked Ji-Wan for a report. How had they held so long? Ji-Wan stood straight despite her exhaustion. She said they did what humans do. They survived. They adapted. They refused to give up. That was all. Nothing special. Just the basic training that every human receives from the moment they are born on a death world. The Admiral shook her head slowly. She said that was not basic. That was extraordinary. She had seen the security footage, watched how they fought, and she understood now why everyone in the galaxy needed to pay attention to humans. They were not just another species. They were something different, something dangerous. Later, after medical treatment and debriefing, the cadets sat together in a new barracks. They were quiet, processing what they had been through, what they had survived, what they had learned. Min-Woo said he understood now, really understood. He said that watching Ji-Wan fight was like watching nature itself, relentless, unstoppable, inevitable. She was not stronger or faster or tougher than their enemies. But she was something more important. She was a survivor from a world that tried to kill her every day, and that made her Apex. The others nodded. They had asked the question weeks ago. Why was she Apex wearing human skin? Now they knew the answer. She was not wearing human skin. She was human, and humans were Apex. That was what evolution on a death world created. Not the strongest species, not the fastest, the one that refused to die. Weeks later they graduated. They returned to their homeworlds and their militaries. But they carried with them the lessons Ji-Wan had taught. They taught others what they had learned. The knowledge spread. Throughout the galaxy, people started to understand. Humans looked soft, looked weak, looked harmless, but underneath that appearance was something that had survived the worst world in known space, something that never quit, never surrendered, never stopped. The story of Sentinel-9 became famous. How a human instructor and 6 cadets held a station against an invasion. How they fought not like soldiers but like survivors. How they showed what humanity really was. And somewhere, on a new assignment at a different training station, Ji-Wan was already teaching another class of cadets. Different species, different backgrounds, but the same lessons. The same first rule she taught everyone: never underestimate anything, especially not a human. Because humans are not what they appear to be. They are not soft prey. They are not weak civilians. They are apex predators from a death world. They are survivors wearing skin that hides something terrifying. They are the species that refuse to die no matter what their planet threw at them. And if you ever find yourself fighting one, you better hope they are on your side. Because a human who decides to survive will do whatever it takes, will endure whatever pain, will overcome whatever obstacle. They do not have the option to quit. Evolution did not give them that luxury. The galaxy learned that lesson on Sentinel-9. 1 human. 6 students. Against impossible odds, and they survived, because that is what humans do.